Hi, Nimisha, and welcome to Entrepreneurcast. It's so great to have you on the show with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be joining you this morning as well.
So, Nimisha, before we get going with the business side of things, tell us a little bit about who are you outside of your business and what do you enjoy doing in your spare time?
Wow, good. That's a good question. I think it's always a tough one to answer because a lot of entrepreneurs sort of live and breathe business 24/7. So you've kind of thrown me off with that first question. What do I do in my spare time? I love to travel. Like I'm an avid traveler. Um, I was thinking about it the other day. I've probably traveled to well over 20 countries, in the last 10 years. So that's something I really, enjoy doing. And if I have sort of spare time or got some like sort of 2, 3 months out in my year, I'll definitely take those off and sort of go away and travel. And I think that's part of the reason we also all, or I definitely have built up, the businesses and the sort of enterprises that I have is because I always wanted to be able to have that freedom to do that, to be able to pursue your interests. So travel is definitely one of them. Philanthropy is a big one. I do a lot of charity work. And by that, I mean actually going and physically being part of the charity on the ground, getting involved with the work they do. So I've done things like help build schools in Asia. We've worked with like animal conservation in Africa. So yeah, I'd say those really sum up sort of the two key things that I would do when I have some spare time. But yeah, outside of that, I definitely live and breathe business and sort of supporting entrepreneurs with their own business journeys, growth, success. So yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Amazing. So, tell us all about your business. What is it that you do and what inspired you to start it?
So I actually have two businesses, and under those two businesses, we sort of operate multiple brands. So the first business we started, it was actually something I started with my mom. So she was kind of my first investor, so to speak. So we started up a Asian bridal fashion brand. So we wanted to cater to a market where you could have custom made bridal wear, and not just for the bride and the groom, but also for the entire entourage that comes with them. So it was born from a place of real passion for craftsmen, for the skills that they have. I think, India or generally Asian fashion is just so much more elaborate, and there's so much more sort of skills and techniques and intricacy involved in that. And that's something that my mom and I both had a real passion for from the perspective of just the artistry of it. So we wanted to take all of that and really turn it into an enterprise. So we started that about 3 years ago now. So in June, we'll be 3 years old. And then off the back of that, we also started to work on sort of other smaller projects. So at the moment, we're working on a social enterprise, which is all based around jewelry. So we work with street children, women who haven't been able to secure jobs, mainly in Africa. And we work with local NGOs to skill them up with jewelry making, with the kind of skills and techniques that they would need to run their own business. And then we provide them the platform here in the UK to sell their products. So that was also a spin-off of some volunteer work that I had done out in Africa. So I quite like that my two worlds collide in that way. So, you go and do something sort of philanthropic, and then you see the opportunity in it and you turn it into something that can actually help people. So that's business number one. But the second one is all around coaching and consulting. So I actually started out my career about now 10 years ago working within the remit of advising businesses. So I started off with working at banks, and then I went away and had about 6 years of working within management consultancy. And so I kind of like took all the things I had learned from those sort of 7, 8 years of experience and actually started to advise businesses myself. So as opposed to working for somebody else, I did it for myself. And only in the last 3 years did I really get into coaching. So it was kind of like, again, bringing together that people development aspect of things, and not just at the level of your business, but also you as a person, and bringing those two together and helping, startups, medium-sized businesses, corporates, whatever it is, to achieve, really radical change in their business. Sometimes some of the clients have insane ideas of like, I want to build an aircraft that will fly to Mars. I mean, no one's doing that yet, apart from but my passion is really to be able to work with people at that level, where they sometimes feel like the most insane or ridiculous or radical ideas that they have are not achievable. And my passion is really to show them that it doesn't matter how crazy the idea is, with the right structure, the right framework, and the right process and the right support, you can achieve those. Like, if I always say to everyone, if Steve Jobs didn't do what we do, what he did, we wouldn't have iPod, Apple, Mac, none of those things. Or if, Mark Zuckerberg didn't invent Facebook, I don't know what half of us would be doing right now. So I think I want to be able to support those entrepreneurs and kind of giving them that real the motivation and the positivity and the tools, techniques to really achieve those, wild ideas. So yeah, in summary, those are the those are the two businesses I run, and that's really where all my passion sits. It's all around creativity, coaching, and advising businesses.
So between your traveling and running your businesses, coaching, and doing charity work, what would you say your typical day looks like?
Honestly, I really don't have a typical day. I think like most people always go, oh, well, what's your daily routine, or what do you do? And I'm like, I actually don't have one. I think because of the multitude of things that I do, I've always told myself you have to stay flexible. So that's probably the only consistent thing that I do have in my day-to-day routine, which is flexibility. It's, really looking at your day by day, and kind of quickly being able to assess and prioritize, okay, these are the things that need to happen now, this in the afternoon. So I wouldn't say I have a typical day by any stretch of the imagination, but I have sort of little routines, and they're not necessarily associated to running the businesses, but they run me. Basically, they help me operate better. So just a simple morning routine of getting up, doing some meditation, a little bit of yoga, a good breakfast. I'm one of those people who gets hangry. Like, have you ever heard of that term, like when you're hungry and then you get really angry? So
oh, that's me.
yeah, I think we're all like that. So for me, food is like fundamental. So breakfast is always like on the agenda regardless. And I think if that routine goes well in the morning, it's just 2 to 3 hours. The rest of the day always runs pretty smoothly. You tend to kind of cope better. And I think that also comes from having worked in really high pressure environments where you've got to be able to be flexible, change your approach pretty much within seconds. So yeah, I wouldn't say I have a set routine in a day just by virtue of what I do, but I have little what I call like my religious activity in the morning is to do some mindfulness, do some meditation, some yoga, get a good meal, and then that sets me up for the day.
Amazing. So Nimisha, throughout our entrepreneurial and business journey, we come across a lot of challenges.
Oh, yeah.
What would you say was the greatest challenge you came across, and how did you manage to overcome it?
That's a really good question. I think if I was to really think about what is the biggest challenge, I think it's a belief in yourself. So we're so lucky in the world that we live in right now that we have accessibility to all sorts of information. Just hit Google and we'll get the answers we need. So I think those things no longer pose that sort of challenge which they would have traditionally for somebody who was doing this 20, 30 years ago. I think right now the biggest challenge is that sort of sense of self-belief, especially when you're going out and doing something that's going totally against the grain of what is the norm. So that ability to kind of believe in yourself and really believe in what you're doing, staying motivated. I think, as entrepreneurs, I'm sure you know this, we have so many setbacks. We'll put in like 100% of the effort, and it just take one person to turn around and say, I don't like your idea, I don't think what you're doing is good, or, you'll get the criticism. And if you're a perfectionist, like most entrepreneurs are, you'll kind of really hold on to that 1% rather than focusing on the 99% of, people saying, this is great what you're doing, keep going at it. So it's very much a mindset thing. And how do I overcome that? It's that morning routine, honestly. And it's just getting up and kind of taking just 10 minutes to yourself and saying, why am I doing what I'm doing? Forget everybody else, forget what other people think, but what is my why, and staying focused on that. Because I think it's also very easy to then, again, in our crazy social media visible world, to constantly be looking at other people and going, oh, well, they're doing this or they're doing that, or she's doing it better or he's doing it better. And that can really cripple you. I mean, I've had those experiences, especially at the very beginning. And, the industry I started the first business in is fashion, which is ruthless. So to not having had any fashion kind of, qualifications or experience in that respect, that was a challenge to kind of get up every morning and be like, and I had those moments where I'd be like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm not a fashion designer. I don't know how to da-da-da-da. But I think beyond that point of your fear or beyond that point of your self-doubt is where, you succeed, because you push past that. And then all of a sudden you come out with hundreds of lessons. Even if things didn't really go the way you wanted to, you've learned something. Like a lot of times my friends, support system, they all have to remind me that you do realize, Nimisha, now you have 3 years of experience in fashion. That's probably more than even most graduates would have. And I was like, yeah, that's a really good point. So it's very much about pushing past your own self-doubt and really pursuing it regardless of what people say, because on the other side of it, you've grown a skill set, you've created something fantastic. And even if those things haven't worked out, you've learned something. And there's no better thing than learning. I really believe that. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And definitely a lot of people I talk to, they actually say the same thing. They
Yeah,
say one of the biggest challenges is to believe in yourself.
yeah.
And everybody comes across that, and everyone is like, at some point you just start doubting. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. So, Nimisha, we went through your challenges.
Yeah.
But on the bright side of things, uh, you've been in business for 3 years, and I'm sure you've witnessed quite a few successes. But what would you say was the greatest success?
That's a good one. I'm trying to like run through in my head. I'm like, what is my greatest success? It's interesting because we don't really ask ourselves those questions, right? Like as entrepreneurs, we're like, okay, job done now. Let's get on with it. But if I was to really think about it, I recently, in the last year, started a service where I coach creative entrepreneurs. And by that, I mean people who, in the non-traditional product or service, like they just offer non-traditional products or services. So something that you can't really take and hang off a generic framework. And these are people like makeup artists, photographers, dancers, musicians, and all these guys who I think in this day and age kind of get forgotten by this whole world of coaching where it's like grow a business, make your revenue, da da da. And these poor guys are just kind of sitting there going, I don't even have a clue where to start because they're creative. It's just not how they're wired. So that was a leap of faith to kind of develop a process and a framework for creatives. But the first kind of client I had, she's a Bollywood dancer, and she's actually a school teacher. And she came to me and she said, well, I want to make big money and I believe I can do it by virtue of my skill set, but I just don't know how. So she was kind of the first like guinea pig to test out the system. And wow, like she skyrocketed. So I'd say the greatest successes are kind of taking those sorts of people who the rest of the world may consider, I don't know how to help you, or I don't really know how to support you in growing, your talent or turning your talent into money in the bank. But we did, we're doing it for her. We're in the process. Like she's been working through it for the last sort of 6 weeks, and wow, she's skyrocketing, totally taking off. And I think there's two successes in there. One, it's obviously the belief that the process I have is actually working. But secondly, it's also showing people that being a creative or being a creative entrepreneur, you can't actually fail Because the thing is, your creativity is your USP. It's the unique thing that you sell, and that's never going to be similar to anyone else. Like, I could teach you dance in one way, but the way somebody else teaches you dance or music or art, it's so subjective, totally different. So that was a success for me. It's that realization that, yeah, anyone can do this, because the USP is the ability that kind of, you are your USP, your creativity is your USP. So that was a great success in terms of the realization, but also a great success to know that what I did for them really did support them in their growth.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, Nimisha, as entrepreneurs, we constantly come up with ideas.
Mm.
Where would you say you come up with your best ideas?
Oh, that's a good one. Normally when I'm having fun, like, it's really annoying. Like, I'll be out and be like, okay, I'm not gonna think about work. Da da da. I'll be having like a drink with a couple of friends, or we'll be out, like, doing some sport or activity, and suddenly, like, you have this brain, like, explosion moment. You're like, oh my god, you could do this, and like, most people around me are like, oh, here she goes again. Like, we're not supposed to be thinking about this stuff. But I think there's a psychological element to it. I think when you're less stressed and you're having fun, you're more inspired. Your brain has sort of the more flexibility and capacity to be creative. So again, I think my best ideas come when I'm having fun. So if I really feel like I'm lacking inspiration, or things are just not going the way I want them to, then I'll call up a friend and be like, let's go biking, or just something to kind of relax the brain but stretch it at the same time. So yeah, that's what I would say. Best ideas come when we're having fun.
And also, throughout our life, as well as throughout our business life, we come across a lot of inspirations and across people who inspire us.
Yeah.
So, do you have people that inspire you, or so-called personal heroes?
If you had asked me that question maybe 3-4 years ago, I'd probably rattle off the list. But there's something I've done for myself, which is not to put people on pedestals, because I think that's sometimes also your blind spot. Because when you put somebody on a pedestal, what you end up doing is just trying to emulate them all the time because you love them so much. So I try not to do that. But I think if I was to talk about people who are really inspirational in this day and age, I'd say, Tony Robbins is a big one for me. Like, his journey as a person, as an entrepreneur, and as also somebody who elicits change in people has just been phenomenal. I've been to some of his live events, and just the way he can change the psychology of somebody within minutes is fascinating. I've not seen anybody be able to do that the way he does. So I think on that sort of people and sort of mindset side, it would be him. But in terms of like building business, or sort of building freedom in your life, or the ability to do what you want, to be people like Marie Forleo. So she's fantastic. I think before I even started up these businesses, I used to like religiously watch her like Tuesday podcasts and stuff like that. And she's really, I think what she shares is very honest. It's very authentic. There's no fluff. There's none of the, well, in Harvard we say we must do this. It's just very honest and basic, and just like, if this is what you want to do, this is how you achieve it, keeping it really simple. So I'd say those two people are really the ones that kind of come to mind in a very strong way. And then on the spiritual side of things, because I'm a very spiritual person, I'd say people like Gabrielle Bernstein, Wayne Dyer, even though he's no longer with us, but I think he's with us in spirit. So people like that I definitely look up to, but I don't make the mistake of putting them on pedestals, because I'm quite conscious when we do that, we sometimes try to mimic them or almost become like their carbon copies. So always seek to have them provide you sources of inspiration, but you're your own person. And actually, I think inspiration or inspiring people are just all around you. Actually, you just need to look for them. Like, I think my favorite thing to do is probably go out into the streets of London and just talk to people. Talk to the homeless person on the street. He or she will probably be more inspirational than some of the people you see online, because check out their story. Like, here, look at how they ended up where they are, what they're doing to help themselves. So I think there's inspirational people are all around you all the time. I suppose it's just your perception of it.
Awesome. I love it. Thanks for sharing that. Nimisha, you've been in the business for, quite a good amount of time now. I mean, they say within 3 years, it makes you or breaks you, right?
Oh yeah.
And a lot of businesses fail in the very first year. So you kind of
Yeah.
already went across that mark.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, obviously you have quite a bit of experience, knowledge, and wisdom. So,
Mm.
out of your experience, knowledge, and wisdom, would you share with us your top 3 tips and strategies
Mhm.
um, in how to drive your business and life forward for
Mhm.
any entrepreneur listening today?
Okay. I like that. That's a really good. You've got some good questions. I like.
Thanks.
Okay, so number one, when it comes to business, and this is something I always say to everybody, if you want to succeed, you need to be really, really clear about what it is that your business is doing. Because I think a lot of people, when they start business, it starts with this amazing idea that they were sitting in a pub going, oh, I'm going to solve world peace or something like that. But the reality of the situation is that unless your product or service is actually something that people want, it's not going to succeed. So be really clear about what it is that you want to offer to the market. What is the product, what is the service, like get really, really clear, live and breathe that, because at the end of the day you are your business, and so if you don't live and breathe that, nobody else is going to buy it from you. So getting clear on what is it you're selling, and then who are you selling to? I think this is where like entrepreneurs totally fall down, because they're like, well, I'm going to sell to anyone who buys. And I'm like, no, because then you're you're just speaking to too much of a wider audience, and you're not going to be able to really draw them in, especially in a noisy world which we are in right now. Like you're competing with literally everyone by the second. So if you have real clarity on who that person is, that ideal person that you want to sell to, that makes a big difference. And then the last one is like the medium through which you sell it. So like I always say to people, if you're very clear about what you're selling, who you're selling it to, and how you're going to sell it, the likelihood of you kind of having setbacks from day one is quite minimal. And notice I said you do have setbacks, everybody does, but those 3 things have definitely helped me succeed with these businesses because I was very clear about that. The second piece of advice I'd give is good structure in your business. So another thing I've noticed, especially, and not just with entrepreneurs but also with corporates that I've worked with, if you don't have the right structure and framework in place, it's almost like a skeleton. Like, what's your body going to hang off if you didn't have your bones? It's like getting really clear about the bare bones in your business. What are the processes? What are the systems you need? What are the frameworks that need to be in place? And sometimes I think people think, oh, well, I'm just an entrepreneur. I'm a solo. I don't hire people in my business. So I don't need to think about that. Well, you don't have to build a really complex structure in your business, but just something good enough for you to always fall back on. Because if you really think about it, and this is from my own personal experience, wherever I've worked with clients to understand where were their points of failure, like why did things go wrong, it's always been because of a lack of a process or a lack of a structure or some sort of framework which has kind of made everything just fall apart. And what people don't realize is that they kind of think, oh, well, I'll think of all of that later. But what I coach and teach is think about that first, because when you get that right, then all the hard work you do about getting your visibility up, getting your brand noticed, getting people through the door and selling becomes way more easier. Because imagine if you've done all the hard work in those first 4 stages and then there's no structure. It's like that hard work was worth nothing. So the who, what, why is, and the who, what, where is important. The structures are important. And then the last one I always say is like, be authentic to yourself. I think so many people right now are always like, oh, well, Marie Forleo is doing this, so I'm going to do that. Or this person's doing a podcast, so I'm going to do that. And it's like, stay authentic to who you are as a person. Like, I like, my passion is business, but I also like, I don't like to dress up. Like, you'll see me most of the time in my sweats and fleeces, because that's what I'm comfortable in. But that's authentically who I am. And if I try to pretend to be anything else, people can see that. Like, people notice that straight away. So I'd say those were the kind of 3 key things that I always honored and stuck to within both these businesses, to always be like, keep it authentic to who you are as a person, know your customer, know your product, know how you're going to sell it, and just build some good foundations in your business. And I promise you, if you really, really stand true to those things, you will succeed. Because even if you look at people like Shah Wasmond or Marie Forleo, all of them, they're not being anybody else but themselves, and they've got all of these things nailed down to the T. So if they can do it, absolutely you can do it too.
That's some great stuff there. Thank you very much for sharing, Nimisha. Also, throughout your business journey, did you come across any kind of resources that helped you within your business that you could also just share with us?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the ones which was like a revelation was Canva, spelled Canva. So I know it sounds trivial because you're like, oh, it's just a simple graphic software, but it honestly like changed my life because at that time I wasn't very adept with Photoshop or Illustrator, and most of our brands are visual, especially mine. It's all about your visual identity and what are you constantly putting out every day. So a toolkit like Canva was great. And by the way, I'm not on a commission to like promote them, just saying that. But just how quickly you can create content on Canva is amazing. And then other tools that I found very, very useful. Ironically, Facebook. Love it. Like, again, not on a commission from Facebook to keep talking about it, but honestly, it's literally the best platform to promote your business, get to know your customer. The accessibility to information, if you know how to use it, is fantastic. So I'd say those two were definitely kind of pivotal for me, especially when growing my businesses, for sure.
Awesome, thanks for sharing. Nimisha, I come across a lot of people who say that at some point in life, they came across a book that changed their life.
Yeah.
Did you have such a book?
Yes, I did. Rhonda Byrne, The Secret. Yeah. So I mean, I know a lot of people know about the book, but I think that I came across it almost 5 years ago, and it was actually a friend of mine who told me about it. And it was really funny how they told me about it as well. They were like, dude, look, I made this vision board and I'm sticking it in my room. And I was like, this guy's gone nuts. Like, what's he doing? Like, sticking pictures on a wall. And he's like, no, seriously, like, I read this book. It's called The Secret. And it talks about how if you visualize what you want or kind of keep it at the forefront of your mind, it will become a reality. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And that was kind of my first sort of insight into this whole world of how powerful your mind can be, and so I read it, and it changed my entire perception of not just me as a person but just life in general. And I wouldn't say it changed me, but it helped me tap into a part of me that I wasn't really aware even existed. And I think that's the kind of key thing there. A lot of us think, oh, this book is going to change my life. It will change your life, but I think it's more about it allowing you to tap into an ability that's already there that you didn't know you had. And so I think, yeah, The Secret was definitely life-changing for me.
Awesome. Nimisha, I mean, you've been in a business now for some time. You have a stable business there. You have your second business. You have time to travel. You have time to do the charity.
Yeah.
But what is next for you? What's your next big goal, aim, dream? And if there is someone listening today who could potentially help you get there, who would
Yeah.
it be?
Okay. So next big goal, aim, dream. I think over the last 10 years, so I've been going through an exercise of kind of doing a stop check. I just turned 30, so I think you go through a bunch of things as you cross another decade. So I was doing some real soul searching about, what is it that's next for me? And I sat there and I thought, well, I've learned a lot. I've built some amazing resources, tools. I've created a great network. But how can I optimize that to be of its highest service? Not just me, but the whole piece. And something I'm really passionate about, and this is kind of the next big thing for me, is to support young people in sort of unprivileged situations. So like, and this kind of comes from virtue of all the sort of philanthropic work I've done, but I want to be able to support young kids in Africa, in India, in Asia, who by virtue of their circumstance have not had access to the tools or the learnings that they need to be able to progress in life. Because I think like the ability for somebody to achieve something is all up here. It's just they've not had the right people around them or the right systems or the right process around them. So I would love for anyone who feels called to support these young people in the same way that I am to kind of reach out to me and let's get our heads together and see like how could we really do this. I mean, there are some great organizations out there who do phenomenal work, like if you heard of Pencils for Promise, they build schools all over the world because they believe every child should have access to basic education. But the kind of subset of people that get forgotten are teenagers, and they're the most vulnerable. Like people don't realize it. They're going through puberty, their hormones are kicking off, and sometimes if they're not in the right environments, these places can be really, really dangerous for them. So my next big mission is really to create a network, or call it what you want, a vehicle, but something that really supports these kids. Because I remember in my last trip to Africa, I was sitting and talking to some young girls, and I do this a lot. Like if you meet people very close to me, I'll just go and talk to strangers because that's kind of just my sauce. It's who I am. And I was talking to these girls, and they were kind of talking about how they feel like quite marginalized by society. They can't go to school. They have a lot of judgment and all these sorts of things that sit around them. And I just felt really sad. And I was trying to support them and sort of saying, speak to your local school, like see how these things can help you. But what really struck me was that they just didn't believe that anybody was there to help them. And I thought that was so, so sad, because they felt like they were like, you as an older generation are robbing us away from our opportunities. Politicians don't support us, especially in Africa. These sorts of things are just not on their agenda. And, they really had given up. And I think for someone who's 13, 14 to just give up, I just think that's horrible. Like they're supposed to be the future. They're supposed to be the people that are going to, continue all the great work that people like you and I are doing. So let's do something to support them. They're next. So how is it that all of us can get our heads together and support these girls and boys in a way that's going to motivate them, that's going to inspire them to like really be the next set of change makers in the world? So that's the big next mission for me.
Amazing. Well, let me quickly share my vision with you.
Sure.
I guess there is a reason behind us, getting connected.
Yeah.
I actually done a very short episode on it just to share my vision. And one of the things that I want to do is to basically set up a charity and to get funds behind me. But the charity is about helping kids who have no parents, or orphans, or kids who have basically troubled parents, or parents who are drug addicts, alcoholics, in prison. So kids who have no influence of anyone and have no help or support from someone. So what I want to develop is a system to teach them personal development, educate them from very young age, but also get specialists who can help figuring out what their skill set is, what their vision is, what their dreams are, put it all together and invest in their education so that those kids can go and study exactly what they feel they should do.
Yeah.
And then provide them with a blueprint of how to get successful in that. Whatever it is that they want to do, whether they want to be creative, whether they want to, become a teacher, or whatever it is, they go in sports, but invest in their education. So that's kind of, because if we change the future of the next generation, I believe the whole world will change.
Absolutely. I am so 100% with you on that. Because I think, like, just to kind of jump in there a little bit, that's what people don't get. And it's so frustrating. It's like, if you're upset about the current situation of the world at the moment, stop trying to change the old man. Hint. Yeah. Go and change the younger person, because they're next. influence them, teach them, show them to be better. Because that's how our world's really going to change. And I really, really believe that.
So maybe we can team up
Yes,
and come up
absolutely.
with a plan.
A hundred
Sounds
percent.
good. So, Nimisha, we are coming to the end of the interview. But
Mhm.
before we say our goodbyes, is there anything else you would like to add or advise on?
Just a little bit of a kind of motivational nugget for whoever's watching this. I'm not a big kind of fan on stories, like personal stories, but I think they are important. So I just want to share to anyone who's out there who's debating about starting a business or starting a charity or whatever, but starting something, just start. I think we spend way too much time procrastinating, looking for the right moment, looking for the right timing, the right resourcing, funding, and I think that cripples people. And very much like you and me, there are lots of people out there who have fantastic ideas, who want to do like great, great work in the world, but the thing that's stopping them is literally that just starting. So for whoever's watching this, if you've been debating for a while now, stop debating and just get started. And if you need help, there's a network of people endlessly who will support you. So just get started.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Nimisha, for anyone who wants to get in touch or follow you in any way,
Yeah.
what's the best way to do that?
So you can search me through social media. You just search my name or search the tagline Creative Coach Consultant. You will come across my Facebook page, Instagram feeds, and my website should be going live within the next 2 to 3 months. But like an avid Facebook lover, I am very active on Facebook. So if you want to reach me, that's probably the best place to come and get me. And I'll pretty much respond like that.
Awesome. Sounds great. Nimisha, thank you so much for finding the time and coming on the show. It's been great to have you. Great fun. Thank you for all the advice, and I really look forward to meeting in person.
Great, I do too. And I really look forward to how we can work together on this big mission we have.